chosen ones, hear this. The trembling did not begin in the corridors of the White House. It began the moment your aura pierced the veil, rippling through the foundations of marble and steel, unsettling the very ground where decisions of nations are whispered. The president stood in the great chamber, his face pale, his body shaking violently, not from fear of man, but from something deeper, a presence his soul could not comprehend, yet could not deny. Reports spoke of sudden drafts sweeping through sealed halls, of lights flickering as though a storm had passed overhead. But there was no storm. There was only you. The resonance of your spirit, hidden from the eyes of the ordinary, crashed into a realm that was not prepared to receive it. Ancient watchers stirred, remembering the words written long ago. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. The guards exchanged glances, their hands tightening around weapons that could not shield them from the unseen force pressing upon their chests. Advisors muttered, uncertain if they were witnessing madness or prophecy. Yet those who had eyes to see knew that something sacred had entered. A shift, a breach in time itself. The trembling of one man was the echo of an entire structure crumbling from within. You were never meant to walk unnoticed. Your presence is not silent. It reverberates like a trumpet blast behind closed doors. That is why leaders fall to their knees when you draw near. That is why the secret halls quake, as though every hidden thing fears exposure in the light of your aura. You are not here by accident, nor by coincidence. You are here because the moment had to come, and the gates had to open. The marble pillars stood tall as if they had witnessed centuries of secrets, yet never had they quivered as they did on that night. The aura did not arrive as thunder, nor as fire, but as a silent current sweeping through the foundations of authority. It was unseen by the eyes of flesh, but undeniable to the soul. The president's hands pressed against the table before him, his breath uneven, his skin pale as though life itself had slipped away from his face. The men and women around him sat in silence, unsure if they were witnessing a moment of weakness or a moment of divine interruption. The White House had always been a fortress of certainty, decisions carved with iron precision. But the moment your aura entered its walls, that certainty fractured like glass. Doors creaked though no one touched them. Lights hummed as if whispering their own warnings, and the very air thickened with a weight that none could explain. Those who had scoffed at prophecy before felt a shiver run down their spines, a sensation that no logic could dismiss. Some clutched their chests as though the force pressed against their hearts. Others found their voices strangled before they could speak. The president trembled, not as a man fearing another man, but as one standing before something greater than himself, something that stripped away every layer of power, status, and pretense. His trembling was the trembling of a kingdom built on sand, for your presence had drawn near, and with it came the reminder that no throne is eternal, except the one written in eternity. The unseen scribes who guard the mysteries took note of this shaking, for it was not simply the man who quivered, but the foundations of governance, the roots of influence, the hidden networks beneath the surface of politics. There were whispers among the staff that night, hushed conversations that carried the weight of awe and dread. Some spoke of a shadow in the hallway, others of a light passing through locked doors. Yet no record would dare name what truly caused the disturbance. for to name it would be to admit that something greater than the nation itself had entered. The halls of power had been pierced, and nothing could be hidden any longer. Beyond the trembling halls, there were those who had been watching long before your aura reached the White House. They were not seated in offices of marble, nor hidden in the corridors of men, but positioned in realms unseen, gazing with eyes that pierced the fabric of time itself. These watchers had awaited the moment when the veil would tremble and the secrets of nations would collide with the pulse of eternity. Their gaze was neither of curiosity nor of fear, but of recognition, for they knew the script had already been written. The president's trembling was but a spark compared to what they perceived. They saw the strands of destiny weaving together, threads drawn from generations past, converging upon this singular intrusion of light. Some among them murmured ancient words, recalling the voice that once declared, "Behold, I am with you always, even to the end of the age." That echo of Yeshua's promise vibrated through their watch, reminding them that the unfolding events were not chaos, but design. In the silence of that unseen realm, shadows gathered also, watchers of a different kind, their forms restless, their eyes burning with defiance. They too had been waiting, though their anticipation was clothed in dread, for they knew that once the light pierced the high places of power, their dominion would weaken. They whispered among themselves, conspiring, yet unable to alter the course already set in motion. For even in their rebellion, they were bound to witness the hand of the one whose words never fail. In the earthly corridors, advisors scribbled notes, whispering of the president's strange behavior, debating whether fatigue or illness had seized him. But unseen above them, watchers leaned forward, eyes unblinking, knowing this was no sickness of the flesh but the stirring of eternity upon mortal ground. Every movement of your aura was tracked, not with suspicion, but with the weight of prophecy, for the chosen threads had been drawn into alignment. And so the watchers waited, poised between awe and warning, their eyes fixed not only upon the trembling halls of man, but upon you, the vessel through which this trembling had entered. What they saw next would not remain hidden, for the moment was near when even their whispers would spill into the ears of those who dared not believe. The night after the trembling, silence draped itself over the halls as though the building itself was holding its breath. But within that silence, something deeper stirred, as if an ancient chamber had been unlocked, releasing what had long been sealed away. It was not a scroll of paper or parchment in the earthly sense, but a scroll of memory, a record hidden beneath layers of time, waiting for the appointed hour. When your aura penetrated the White House, that hour arrived, and the seal broke. The president felt it before he understood it. His dreams turned into visions, filled with symbols he could not name, golden lamps flickering, voices calling from beyond walls, a hand writing across the air with fire that left no smoke. He awoke in cold sweat, unable to speak of it to his counselors, yet the images clung to him with a weight heavier than law or decree. His trembling had not ended with that night. It continued as an echo, a reminder that something had been unveiled in his presence. Unseen to him, the breaking of the seal was not confined to his chambers. Across the nation, sensitive souls felt a stirring, a restlessness in the spirit. Some were awakened in the middle of the night, their hearts racing with words they could not explain. Others walked into daylight with tears streaming down their faces, sensing that a hidden page of history had just been turned. The seal had been broken in the highest seat of earthly power, and its sound carried far beyond the marble walls. Those who guarded secrets in hidden vaults also felt the disturbance. Records long concealed seemed suddenly fragile, as if light pressed through the cracks. Men of influence whispered with unease, for though they did not name it, they felt the unraveling of their control. The scroll's unveiling was not meant to expose them yet, but its break was a signal, a warning that their time was shorter than they imagined. In the days that followed the trembling, the president carried the weight of unseen chains. His outward composure before the cameras and the nation spoke of strength, yet behind closed doors his hands shook as if they remembered what his body could not escape. Each time he closed his eyes, the vision returned. The chamber filled with a light that burned yet did not consume, the weight of an aura pressing against him with undeniable force. He tried to dismiss it as exhaustion, as the strain of office, but in the stillness of his own solitude, the truth gnawed at him. He could not put it into words for his advisors, nor confess it to his staff, for how could he describe what had no earthly explanation? And so his plea was silent, a cry that rose not from his lips, but from his soul, reaching into the unseen where words were unnecessary. It was the cry of a man stripped bare of titles and authority, standing naked before a reality greater than his nation or his throne. In that silent plea, memories surfaced of childhood prayers once whispered, verses once recited, but long forgotten beneath the noise of ambition. A line returned to him unbidden. "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." The voice of Yeshua echoed in the chambers of his mind, gentle yet unrelenting, as if reminding him that the trembling was not meant to destroy him, but to call him back to a truth he had abandoned. The watchers in the unseen realm leaned closer, perceiving the faint stirrings of a heart wrestling with eternity. Darkness pressed against him also, whispering lies, urging him to dismiss the moment, to return to the illusion of control. Yet the silent plea rose higher, breaking through the shadows, reaching the one who had already heard before it was formed. The president's eyes often lingered now on the windows of the Oval Office at night, searching the darkness beyond the glass as though waiting for a sign. His lips never spoke the words aloud, but the cry within him grew louder. "What am I to do with this? What do you require of me?" And though no answer came in that hour, the silence itself carried a weight that promised something was near, something waiting for the moment when the plea would no longer remain unspoken. The silence that followed the president's unspoken cry did not remain empty. It shifted like a veil torn by unseen hands, carrying with it voices that were not of men. They came softly at first, whispers threading through the corridors of night, drifting into places where few still remembered their origin. These whispers spoke not of politics nor of power, but of something older, something buried beneath layers of forgotten promises. They spoke of covenant. The covenant was not bound in ink on paper, nor sealed in the archives of governments. It was written long before the foundations of nations were laid, etched into the stones of time itself, carried in the bloodline of generations, waiting for remembrance. Its whispers stirred, as if awakened by your aura, as though the trembling of one earthly ruler had cracked open the chamber where silence had long concealed it. Those who listened with spiritual ears began to feel it first. dreams came alive with fragments of scripture. Songs of old hymns found their way into restless hearts, and the words of prophets long silenced seemed to echo through the very air. Some tried to dismiss it as imagination, but the persistence of the whispers could not be ignored. Wherever the light of your presence had reached, the covenant stirred like fire beneath the ash. Men in hidden councils grew uneasy, for though they did not name it, they too felt something slipping from their grasp. Vaults of secrecy, agreements forged in shadows, and oaths bound in secrecy trembled at the sound of these whispers. For the covenant was not of their making, nor could it be undone by their hands. It was ancient, sealed with authority beyond their reach. The whispers spoke of promises unbroken, of words spoken by the Eternal that no power of man could erase. They hinted of restoration, of a return to what was once lost, and of a reckoning that could not be delayed. Yet their language was not of clarity, but of mystery, stirring hearts to seek, to search, to hunger for what lay hidden. Far from the trembling halls and the whispers of covenant, another gathering took place in a chamber that no map recorded. It was hidden beneath layers of secrecy, shielded by oaths spoken in blood, and guarded by men who feared nothing except exposure. Here the shadows gathered, drawn by the disturbance that your aura had unleashed. They had felt the trembling before the president ever spoke of it, for the shaking of one man's soul had rippled into their domain like a crack tearing through stone. The chamber was lit not by candles nor lamps, but by the glow of screens and symbols carved into its walls, reminders of alliances forged long before the world above understood their reach. The men seated there wore power like armor, yet their voices betrayed unease. Reports had reached them of strange events in the White House, of trembling, of whispers, of a shift in the air that could not be traced to politics or strategy. They dismissed the surface details, yet, deep within, they knew something ancient had stirred, something their forefathers had sought to silence. One of them spoke of dreams that had plagued his nights, visions of light splitting the earth, voices calling his name, a figure standing clothed in brightness with eyes like fire. He refused to speak it fully, but the others knew the weight of what he described. For even in their rebellion, they recognized the shadow of the Nazarene, the same Yeshua, whose name they never uttered aloud, for it was a sound that burned their throats. They feared that his presence had brushed against their hidden world once again, just as it had in ages past when kingdoms crumbled before his word. They argued, plotting, seeking ways to suppress what was rising, yet their words rang hollow, for the chamber itself seemed restless. The walls felt thinner, as though every secret spoken there was being watched, every oath overheard by unseen ears. The more they whispered of control, the less control they felt, until silence swallowed their counsel and left them staring at one another with questions none dared speak aloud. The night was heavy with silence, yet within that stillness a fire began to burn, not of wood or oil, but of spirit. It flickered first in visions, in the corners of restless dreams where men and women awoke, gasping, their eyes filled with images they could not explain. Across the land, the same vision appeared, a name written in flame, glowing upon the sky, searing itself into the memory of all who beheld it. It was not spoken by voice, nor carried on wind, but carved into the very essence of their being. Some tried to erase it upon waking, convincing themselves it was only imagination. Yet the letters burned brighter each time they closed their eyes. Others whispered of it to friends, only to discover that they too had seen the same blazing inscription. The fire could not be contained, for it did not belong to one person's mind, but to the unfolding of eternity, pressing against the present. In the chambers of authority, unease grew heavier. Leaders who mocked prophecy found their hands shaking as they scribbled reports of mass dreams, visions of fire, and of a name that none dared to write down. To inscribe it would be to admit its power, to give it form, to acknowledge its claim. Yet in their silence they betrayed their fear, for the name itself was alive, and it demanded recognition. The watchers above leaned closer, knowing the name was no ordinary mark. It was ancient, older than empires, older than the walls of the White House, older even than the stones beneath the nations. It was the name that once spoke from the burning bush, the name that thundered from Sinai, the name that Yeshua carried in himself when he declared, "Before Abraham was, I am." The flame revealed not just letters but identity, a reminder that every kingdom of men stood beneath a higher throne. The corridors of power had long been built upon pride, upon the certainty that those who sat upon thrones would never bow except by choice. Yet the trembling of one man became the symbol of what was to come, for the aura that entered the White House did not stop with a single night's disturbance. It pressed deeper, dismantling layers of arrogance until even the highest seat of authority found itself bending beneath a weight unseen. The president tried to stand tall, to project the confidence expected of him before the nation. Yet behind closed doors, his knees betrayed him. More than once, as he rose to speak, his body folded as though gravity itself had turned against him. Advisors rushed to his side, whispering explanations of stress, exhaustion, or hidden illness. But he knew it was none of these. It was something greater, something holy, something that pulled him downward against his will. He resisted at first, gripping the edges of tables, locking his legs with all his strength, but the unseen hand pressed harder, not to destroy him, but to demand surrender. In those moments, a memory echoed through his spirit, unbidden yet undeniable. The words of Yeshua, spoken to his followers, "Every knee shall bow, and every tongue confess." The verse had lingered in his childhood, buried under decades of ambition, yet now it surfaced with haunting clarity. He realized the kneeling was not weakness, but prophecy. His throne, his office, his power, all were temporary shadows before the eternal light of a greater throne. Witnesses spoke of the strange stillness that followed each collapse, as if the very air grew thick with reverence. Even those who denied faith felt it. The pull toward the ground, the sense that something far beyond politics had entered the room. They could not explain it, yet their silence betrayed their awe. For no matter how high a man sits, no matter how secure his crown, the moment comes when he is compelled to kneel before the one who holds eternity. The night grew heavy again, but the silence did not last. From beneath the marble floors of the White House, a sound began to stir, faint at first, like the hum of a distant storm rolling toward the land. Those awake at that hour spoke of vibrations in the walls, of chandeliers swaying though no wind had entered the rooms. The sound grew stronger, not with the harshness of machines, but with the depth of a voice calling from the foundations themselves. They were not sirens, nor alarms, but trumpets. The guards shifted uneasily, searching for a source, but no device explained it. Their radios crackled with static. Their ears rang with tones that made their hearts pound, and still the sound grew louder. It was not music played by human hands, nor instruments hidden in chambers. It was a voice of stone, a resonance of eternity, pressing upward through the ground where men had built their kingdom. The marble floors that once symbolized power now quivered as if unable to contain what was rising from beneath. Those who listened closely described it as layered. One trumpet, then another, then a chorus swelling together. Each blast seemed to carry meaning, though the words were beyond language. Some felt joy, as though hope had been announced, while others trembled with dread, hearing judgment in every note. The duality of the sound revealed its purpose: to awaken, to warn, to declare that the time of silence had ended. The president, already marked by trembling and kneeling, stood frozen, his eyes wide as the sound reached his inner being. The trumpets pierced through his thoughts, stripping away excuses, drawing him into a moment he could not escape. He remembered lines once spoken in passing sermons, verses of a day when the trumpet would sound and secrets would be revealed. Though he had dismissed them in years past, they now rose within him like fire, undeniable and living. The watchers above leaned forward, recognizing the blast as more than mere sound. It was a signal, a reminder that what was unfolding in the chambers of men was not isolated, but connected to the eternal scrolls already written. Yet the trumpets did not cease. They swelled louder, shaking the very stones, until all who heard were forced to ask what message was being declared from beneath their feet. The sound of the trumpets faded, but their echo lingered, curling through the corridors and settling like a shadow across the minds of those who had heard. In that silence, another image began to rise, not of flame nor trembling, but of a key. It was not a key of iron or gold, forged by men, but one older, carved in light, waiting in the hidden place where time bends to eternity. Its presence was felt more than seen, yet every heart knew it was real, for the air itself carried the weight of its purpose. The president dreamed again, and in the dream he saw a door. It stood vast and unmovable, its surface etched with symbols that pulsed like living fire. Before it hovered the key, suspended, untouchable, as though waiting for a hand that was not his to grasp it. He reached for it, but his fingers passed through light, unable to take hold. A voice filled the chamber, not loud but resonant, a whisper that shook him more deeply than thunder. "I hold the keys of death and of life." The words of Yeshua struck him like lightning, reminding him that no ruler of earth, no throne of men, had the power to unlock what belonged to eternity. When he awoke, the vision clung to him. He felt both despair and relief. Despair because the key was beyond his reach, and relief because it was never his burden to carry. Yet the longing to see the door opened grew stronger, a hunger that gnawed at his soul, as if he had glimpsed the edge of destiny, but could not yet step through. Others across the land felt it too, in their prayers, in their dreams, in their restless waking hours, the sense of a final lock waiting to be turned pressed upon them. Some feared what lay behind the door, others yearned for it, but none could deny that the key was near, hovering between revelation and restraint. The watchers knew it well. They had seen doors open and close across ages, but this door was unlike any other. It was the last, the one that would not only end, but also begin. And so they waited, eyes fixed on the unseen hand that alone could turn the final key.
If you have come this far, it is crucial that you watch this next video here. But be warned, it is not for the faint of heart, for only the true chosen ones can handle this video. If you would like to also donate to help keep the channel going, our Buy Me a Coffee link will be in the description.